Hey everyone, welcome to Lesson 6 of Theme 6 GCSE Geography. We're going to be continuing with the theme of global tourism, and what we're going to do today is focus specifically on a country that has experienced a rapid increase in global tourist visitors in the last sort of 20 to 30 years or so. We're going to use India as an example and look at the reasons behind why people are visiting India more than they used to, and then identify the positive and negative impact on the country of having all these additional visitors coming in, and then look for sustainable solutions to the challenges that a country faces when you've got additional people coming in and adding to your population numbers at certain times of year. So if you pause the video here for a moment, go ahead and write down today's title and we'll get started. Okay, so first of all, when you think of India, what's the first thing you think of? How many of you thought of slums? And yes, that is very true, and especially from the perspective that you've learned about India in school, we've talked a lot about the slums of India in Year 9, and earlier on in GCSE as well, in Theme 2, we looked at the Dharavi slum in Mumbai. And India does still have that stigma attached to it, very much being an LIC that's newly become an NIC, a newly industrialized country. But believe it or not, there are an awful lot of things that actually attract tourists to India. So if you look on TripAdvisor at the top 10 things to do around India, this is the map that you get. And it's more than 10 on here, obviously. Okay. Obviously, there's the Taj Mahal. Everyone's familiar with that. But the beaches are particularly spectacular, especially if you come down to the island of Sri Lanka. There's lots of temples and ancient, historical, cultural sites that you can visit. All right. So if we look at the map of India, you've got tourist attractions up here, tourist attractions here, and tourist attractions here. There's not much going on in the middle. So if we then look at a second map, this is a choropleth map. Can you remember what a choropleth map is? It uses shades of the same colour, least being the lightest colour, through to the most of something being the darkest colour. So what this is showing is GDP, gross domestic product. If you remember, we used GNI, GNP, GDP. It's the amount of money made by the country divided by the number of people in it. So what it gives you is the average earnings per person per year in a country or in an area. So if we look at this map of how much money people earn across India, next to this map of where the tourist attractions are in India, what do you notice about the two maps? Yeah, if you look closely, we've got darker green up here. Oh look, there's tourist attractions up here. We've got darker green on the west coast here near the city of Mumbai, which is where the Dharavi slum is. And yet, the people are earning more money there, and there's tourist attractions there. This lower peninsula tip, medium green, tourist attractions, okay? The lightest, most poverty-stricken area where people are earning around about $1,000 to $2,000 in the centre, no tourist attractions. So clearly, tourism is massively important to India's economy. India is a prime example of a country that really they over-rely on tourism, and we'll come to the issues associated with that later. So we can see why. As international tourism has become easier and easier in terms of improvements in technology, improvements in air travel, people have got more disposable income, we've got more paid time off, all those factors we looked at last lesson, places like India are becoming very attractive as an option for holidays or travelling. And this brings a lot of money to the economy and provides an awful lot of jobs as tour guides in the hotel industry, in the catering industry, in the restaurant business. Okay? So the next thing we're going to look at, you've got these statements on the handout that accompanies this lesson. What I'd like you to do is read through them and either, it's early on a Friday morning, either use two different colours or use a numbering system, or if you like, you can cut them out and stick them down in two different columns, make like a table to show the advantages and disadvantages of all these extra tourists coming into India. Now, there is one term in here that I just need to go over with you called enclave tourism. This is basically where a particularly popular area of a country that is particularly popular with tourists, what they do sometimes is they close it off and it is only used for tourism. There's a peninsula on the northern coast of Cuba in the Caribbean that is famous for having done this, and the locals are only allowed in there if you work in the hotels and things, and it's a bit sort of, let's keep it nice for the rich Western tourists and keep out the local riffraff. It's not very socially or culturally appropriate, but it happens. So that's what enclave tourism is. You should be all right with all the other words that are in here. An MNC is a multinational company, a company that has its headquarters in one country, usually an HIC, and its factories or businesses across lots of other countries. We looked at examples of MNCs before, Coca-Cola, Tata. Okay, so other examples would be the Marriott hotel chain, Thomas Cook, Expedia, in terms of tourism. So pause the video here a moment, go ahead and colour code which of these bring good things to India and which of these would be a negative effect of tourism in India. Okay, here's what I went for. All right, you might have made very slightly different decisions. It's entirely up to you, as long as you can justify, explain why you made the decision. So I've used red for negative and like an orangey colour for positives. So as you can see, most of the positives are related to jobs and money. And it does promote awareness of cultural traditions and different food and music and things like that. And when people then go home, they share all this knowledge and experience, and it does help to promote tolerance and understanding and reduce prejudice and discrimination. So it's good culturally and socially and economically. The main downside tends to be environmental. When you're setting up lots of luxury hotels, you're going to be ripping down habitats. Those hotels then are going to be using water and crops from the local area that then aren't available to the locals. All the extra traffic is going to mean extra air pollution from the visitors and things like that. So it puts a strain on the environment. And the land needed for building the hotels quite often is taken off of local farmers. It can mean pickpocketing and things like that, and even though, yes, it does provide jobs and bring money to India's economy, a lot of that money actually goes back to the headquarters of the multinational companies that run the holidays in India. So that's called leakage. When the money doesn't stay in the host country, it goes back to the businesses that are running the holidays there. And if they're MNCs, that means the money's going to leave the country. So you can start to see it's a little bit imbalanced. There's an awful lot of negatives, there's an awful lot of red going on here, and that leads us on to, well, because a lot of people in India lack an education, they are illiterate, the tourist industry is one of the quickest and easiest ways they can get employment as cleaners, as cooks, as, you know, as tour guides and things like that. You don't necessarily have to have, with the rules and regulations, to be in those job roles in LICs. They're not nearly as strict as they are in HICs. You can access those jobs quite easily if you don't have much education. So India has come to rely very heavily on tourism for jobs and boosting the economy. Other LICs and NICs in Southeast Asia, this is very common as well, and in South America, countries like Bolivia, Costa Rica, Thailand, Vietnam, Bali. So what could be the problem with over-reliance on tourism? Well, first off, exploitation. It provides a job that's better than no job, and therefore you earn money that's better than no money, but the wages are still very low. They don't have rules and regulations in LICs and NICs related to minimum wage and breaks and things like that, like we do in this country. So it'd be long hours for not a lot of money. It also means that the income is seasonal. So you have tourist seasons where countries are more popular at certain times of year than at other times of year. So what about in the off-season? How are people going to earn money then? And the economy could take a dip. People are often put off visiting LICs and NICs when outbreaks happen. For example, the Ebola outbreak in Africa, the current COVID pandemic that we're right in the middle of at the moment. At the very start, Southeast Asia, Eastern Asia, China, areas like that, their tourist industry was hit massively because people didn't want to go there. They'd heard of this disease that was spreading. And that can have a lasting effect. It creates stigma, a negative idea that's attached to a country that even after the event has happened or the disease has gone away, there'll be a delay before people start returning. Thailand, for example, after the Boxing Day tsunami in 2004, obviously they're trying to rebuild all their hotels after it had been ripped down by the earthquake and tsunami, but visitors took a long time to start trickling back into the country. They were afraid it might happen again. Local resources. So as we know, in LICs and NICs, the majority of the population are employed in primary industry. So your farmers that are struggling to get by, quite often in maybe quite arid countries like sub-Saharan Africa. And hotels are going to pull a lot of water out of local wells, local rivers, out of the groundwater supply. They're going to be taking up a lot of the local food source, and that means that there's less resources available to locals. Most of the money goes back to MNCs, as we've already mentioned. So if you're relying only on tourism, it's a little bit of a marginal way to support your economy. It's right on the edge, right on the margins of what is reliable. So could you put a subheading, what could be the problem with over-reliance on tourism? If you're putting all your eggs in the tourist basket, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to changes in income at different times of year, and if there's outbreaks and natural disasters and all sorts of things like that. And underneath the subheading, write down these bullet points, please. Okay, so what about sustainable solutions? Tourism is a brilliant way for LICs and NICs to earn money, but there must be a way to allow them to continue to do this, to boost their economy. They can reinvest that money in healthcare, education and infrastructure. Families working in tourism can use the money they earn to send their children to school, work their own way out of poverty. You need to allow tourism in LICs and NICs to continue. But we need to find a way of doing it that doesn't damage the environment as much and doesn't disrupt local culture and local resources as much. So pause the video here a moment, put a heading sustainable tourism and write down this definition, please. Okay, we're going to do a bit of a problem solving task. Now we're going to switch to the island of Phuket in Thailand. Okay, so this is still Southeast Asia. As you can see in the handouts that accompany this lesson, you've got this map that breaks down the different areas of the island of Phuket off the coast of Thailand. So the airport is in the north, and then you can see the main beaches, Bang Tao Beach here, Patong Beach here. The main Phuket town is down here, in Phuket Bay, and you can see a basic road network and where the mountains and smaller villages and things are. Also going with this lesson is a table. I'm going to give you 10 problems caused by tourism in Thailand. And these are sort of general across problems associated with tourism in any LIC or NIC. And for each problem, there are 3 possible solutions. What you need to do is decide which one you think is the most sustainable and write it in the end. After I've gone through all 10 problems and you've chosen 10 solutions, I'll then show you the scoring system. The most sustainable option gets you 10 points. The kind of moderately sustainable, but there may be some hitches, decision gets you 5 points, and the least sustainable decision will get you 0 points. So it's going to be out of 100. Let's see how much you can get. So, the setting. The local council in Phuket wants to make some changes. The island of Phuket in Thailand is exceptionally popular with tourists. If you Google it, the beaches are stunning. You're talking crystal clear blue waters, amazing seafood, lots of culture and tradition, and the beaches are pure white sand, lovely tropical weather. Thailand is beautiful to visit. However, there are a number of major issues that it faces. Rapid and uncontrolled development of tourist facilities. Hotels are flying up left, right and centre, and that's damaging habitats. A damaged environment both on the island and in the sea surrounding it. Thailand does have some pretty good diving because the seas are so clear and they tend to be relatively calm. And what happens is tourists either deliberately snap off coral to take it home as a souvenir, unbelievable I know, or because you're not a very experienced diver, as you're finning along, your fins will break the coral, you'll bash into the coral, and the dive boats as well, when they drop an anchor it breaks the coral, and that means there's then no habitat for the coral polyps and then all the other animals that rely on the coral polyps as part of the food web. There's also pollution from the dive boats as well. And a very large number of tourists. They drop litter, it increases traffic congestion on the roads, which increases air pollution, all kinds of associated issues with extra people. There is an island off the coast of Thailand. Which island is it now? They have the full moon party on it once a month. Koh Phangan, I think. The population of the island triples for one party once a month. It's absolutely bonkers. So, you're being drafted in to offer sustainability solutions to allow the island of Phuket to still have tourism going on, to boost the economy and provide jobs, but in a way that isn't going to have such a damaging impact. So, Problem number 1. Tourists and boats are damaging the coral near Patong Beach. Many of the coral reefs are shrinking and tourists often want to buy coral to take home as a souvenir. So have a look at decision A, B and C alongside problem 1 and write in the final choice column which one you think would be the most sustainable solution to this issue. Okay, problem number 2. The markets in town are becoming full of cheap fake versions of traditional Thai crafts. It's very popular with tourists. When you go abroad, you want to bring back something as a memento, as a souvenir, and wooden crafts like small wooden elephants and things like that are very popular in Thailand for locals to sell. But big companies have cottoned on to the fact that tourists will buy these, and so they're actually making them in factories and churning them out, and tourists can't tell the difference. So not only are the tourists getting ripped off, but the locals aren't making the money from their, from their proper crafts, because everyone's buying the cheaper factory versions. So the money isn't going to the locals that need it. So make your decision, A, B or C for problem 2. Waterfalls in the northeast of the island are being destroyed due to large numbers of visitors. The waterfalls in Thailand are famous for being they're multi-level, and in some of the pools you get those fish that eat all the dead skin off your feet, off your toes. So it's a very popular tourist attraction, but as you can imagine, you'll get lots of footpath erosion and all kinds of problems. So what do you think would be the best decision to make here? Hotel companies have applied to build new hotels near the previously undeveloped, so untouched habitats on Nai Thong Beach. What would you do? The local electricity company is concerned about providing enough energy for the island. More hotels means more electricity, more pressure on infrastructure like sewage pipes and water pipes and things as well. It's going to cause lots of power cuts with all the extra people plugging in at the same times of the day. So what do you think is the best solution here? Currently near Phuket town is nearly full. What would you do about it? Bearing in mind this is a tropical island, rubbish dumps are going to smell in that tropical weather. Phuket town and Patong Beach has been heavily deforested to make way for more hotels. What would you do? Businesses are employing foreigners to work in the better paid jobs, so they're bringing in Western holiday reps to work for them in the hotels. They're not employing local people. What would you do about that? Most investment by the Thai government is in Phuket town and focuses on services for tourists. Of course it does. They know that's one of the main ways to make money, and the better your tourist services and facilities, the more tourists you're going to get, the more money you're going to make for the economy. But this can be at the cost of basic services for the locals. What about the people that live in Thailand? So the money may not be being fairly distributed here. What would you do about it? And finally, number 10, farmers are finding it hard to sell their products because the hotels import all the food from the mainland because it's cheaper. Remember I said Phuket is an island off of mainland Thailand. So what would you do about this? Okay, let's have a look at your scores. So the medium green is 5 points. The olivey green is 10 points. Oh no, wait. Yeah. White is 0. Olive green is 5. Dark green is 10. Okay? So the most sustainable decision for problem 1 was B, and this is because you're still allowing the reefs to be used for diving, but all visitors are given oh wait. No, it is the other way around. The olive green is worth 10 points, the dark green is worth 5 points, and the white is worth 0. So the reason that decision C is worth more than B, you give the visitors a copy of a leaflet that you make about sustainable use, but how do you know they're going to read it? Whereas if you sit them all down for a briefing before you take them out, and they're going on less polluting boats, everyone is going to be educated about how to protect the reef before they go out. So for number 2, Decision A is 0, decision B is 5, and decision C is 10. Hold on, I'm getting really confused with the colours because it's changed it into green on the layout of this. Yeah, olive green is 10. Yeah, okay, yeah. Number 3, so decision A is worth 10, B is worth 5, and C is worth 0. A small entry fee, tourists will still pay that. They won't be bothered by that, and it can be used to fund future conservation and sustainability projects. Number 4, 10, 0, 5. This is quite tricky, to be fair. Reject the proposal and suggest plans are resubmitted for building near partially developed Pangdal Beach. Ask the companies to resubmit the application with more environmental building design and materials, set back from the beach. So C would still cause destruction of the beach at Naitong Beach, which is undeveloped at the moment. This one still allows a hotel to be built, but over where the development is already happening anyway. So you still get a hotel, no habitats destroyed on Naitong Beach. So 0, 5, 10. Because you don't want to limit the visitor numbers, you want to make enough money. 5, 10, 0. Build a recycling plant, recycling collection. Reduce the amount of rubbish in the long run. You won't need as many rubbish dumps. Number 7, 0, 5, 10. The reason B is the most sustainable is you're introducing a minimum standard that will apply to all future hotels. It's a long-term change. Number 8, 0, 5, 10. The reason decision C is the highest scoring is, with B, if you introduce a law that means 90% of employees in hotels have to be local, it only affects people working in the tourist industry. If you provide low-cost skills training for local people, that skills training might be in the building trade, electrician, chef, or whatever. They're not restricted just to tourism. They can get jobs in other industries as well. Number 9, decision A is 0, decision B is 5, and decision C is 10. And finally, number 9, decision B is 0, decision A is 5, and decision C is 10. A cooperative is a group of farmers, and when you group farmers together, they have more power and more say over what happens to them. So this is a really good permanent long-term solution. So what I'd like you to do, you do not need to do all 10, okay? I want you to choose 5. And what I'd like you to do, for the 5 problems that you choose, summarize the most sustainable solution in here, and then use your own knowledge to explain why it is the most sustainable option. So I've done this top one here as an example for you. So this is from problem 1. Introduce less polluting boats and briefing for all tourists. So I've summarized it down. The statement was longer than that. And then I've said, like, this means ocean and coral reef habitat protected, so biodiversity remains high, but tourists still visit, so economy is boosted. So what you're looking for is, how does the solution still allow for jobs and economy and money being made, but in a way that protects people, culture, and the environment? Okay, so choose any 5 problems, double check back through the PowerPoint which of the solutions was the most sustainable. The olive coloured ones are the most sustainable. Summarize the most sustainable solution next to whichever 5 problems you choose, and then elaborate with your own knowledge to explain why it is the most sustainable. How does it allow Thailand to still make money while protecting culture, people, and the environment? Okay, bullet points and dashes and summarizing is absolutely fine. This is just a note-taking task. So subheading, table with 5 problems, 5 solutions with elaborations, please. And that brings us to the end of lesson 6. Quite a lot to take in today. Well done. We'll be moving on next lesson to looking at water resource. Oh no, we won't. That's a lie. We'll be looking at aid, I think. Yeah, we'll be coming on to trade and aid next, I think, if I remember rightly. It might not be. I can't remember. Tune in to lesson 7 and find out. If you have any questions, drop me an email, gleesona@hopecumry.net. Otherwise, I'll see you soon for lesson 7.